I need some help. Now, those can be difficult words for us to say, that we need somebody to help us. You know, a lot of times we live our lives and we take care of ourselves. Hard work and manage yourself, your family. But if life ever pulls the rug out from under your feet, as it does for some, puts you down low, you're down and out on your luck, they would say. Well, when you get down like that and you look like you're overwhelmed with troubles, it can be a challenge to actually turn to someone and say, I need some help. We've been looking at Ruth and Naomi in this book of Ruth study that we've done this month. And as we've watched them, we realize their fortunes have sunk low. They are in poverty. So much so that Ruth has gone out as a poor gleaner, trying to gather up whatever leftovers she can from the harvest. Now, in their poverty situation, Naomi has reached the point where she says it is time for us to reach out for some help. And that's what's going to happen in this chapter 3 of the book of Ruth. They're going to look for a redeemer. That's the title of today's message, My Redeemer, from Ruth chapter 3. Now, the chapter begins with Ruth and Naomi talking because Naomi has formulated a plan. And she proposes that plan to Ruth, and Ruth says, yes, I'll do that. What they're going to do is reach out to Boaz, and they're going to ask Boaz to give them help and assistance. Now, the way they put the ask to him is going to be rather clever, and it's maybe one that's a little bit confusing to us in our modern way of reading it, but when I tell you about it, it'll make perfect sense. Now, here's the situation. Ruth has gone out to be a poor gleaner. That was last week's message, chapter 2. She's picking up leftovers of the stalks of grain that are left behind by the harvesters. Now, she's getting a man who is actually being very generous to him. Boaz is impressed with this woman, Ruth. And while we like to imagine because she's this young, good-looking lady, the text says it's because of her story and character. He has heard about her faithfulness to her mother-in-law, Naomi, following her from her homeland, leaving her parents behind, helping Naomi every step of the way. And he's impressed by that, impressed by her character. And so he's arranged for her to get a generous helping of the leftover grain as she's doing her gleaning every day. Now, that's going to work out great during the harvest season, but harvest is coming to an end now in chapter 3, and that raises the question, so now what do we do to survive? Naomi and Ruth don't have very many options for how to survive in these difficult times, and so this is where Naomi comes up with a plan, and the plan involves going to Boaz and asking Boaz to provide them help and assistance. Now, here's the way she imagined it. She says, we know where he'll be tonight. Boaz will be on the threshing room floor. Now, how does she even know that? Because every landowner is going to be at the harvest protecting their grain, keeping an eye on the workers. That's what they do. So Boaz will be there all day watching the workers in the field. At nighttime, that's when they do all of the winnowing of the grain, separating the chaff from the grain. And so they'll be working into the late evening, and he'll be right there watching it all. When it gets real late and it's time for everybody to get some rest, the servants will find a place somewhere. They'll lay down and sleep. The owner will find a place where he can keep an eye on everything. It's his, and he'll lay down to rest. They has to guard his grain because there's always thieves out there, and especially in a season like they've had, where it started off with a severe famine that ran for years. A lot of people are poor, and the poor will do desperate things, including steal from you. We know where Boaz will be tonight, Naomi says. He'll be at the threshing floor. And so here's what she said for Ruth to do. I want you to wash and get dressed, put on some ointment perfume, and then you will go there tonight and you will approach him. Now, the way you'll do it is don't go while he's still threshing the grain. Don't interfere with his work. Or while he's eating his dinner, don't interfere with that as well. But when it comes time late in the night, when he's ready to lay down and get some rest, make a note of where it is that he lays down to rest. And then you're to go in, and as the text says, go and uncover his feet. He'll have a blanket or a cloak over him. Uncover his feet, and then lay down at his feet. Now, when you hear the story of what Naomi told her to do, and then later in the chapter, Ruth does it, does that strike you as a little bit strange? Pull the blanket off a man's feet and then lay down? You know, it can be a little strange from our modern Western way of doing things. But remember, this is an ancient culture. We're back in the Old Testament days of the book of Judges. And so they had ways of doing things that made perfect sense to them, even if it doesn't for us. And what we're looking at is an example of that. Now, that's what I want to show you as we go through this story, why they do what they do. For example, does it strike you as strange that Naomi is taking the initiative here to set up her daughter-in-law Ruth with this man Boaz, trying to get these two together, maybe pull off a marriage? Does that seem odd? Back in biblical times, not so odd at all. See, back in those days, parents typically would arrange the weddings for their children. In fact, for example, you read the book of Judges, you'll see Samson. One day, Samson, he's traveling through a town. He spotted a beautiful young Philistine woman. I don't even know if he got her name or not. All I know is he goes back to his parents. He says, hey, I saw a pretty Philistine woman. I want you to get her for me as a wife, and then he moves on. I mean, he doesn't put any effort into making that wedding happen. It's his parents who have to do all the work. And that's the way it was back in those days. And so while today we're accustomed to boy meets girl, they eventually come to us, the parents, and tell us they want to get married, want us to help pay for it and all. Actually, the parents were involved from the very beginning. Naomi is indeed making plans for her daughter-in-law Ruth, but that was very typical back in those days. Now, the little deal of uncover his feet, pull the blanket off his feet, does that seem odd? It does seem odd. There is a meaning there, and I'll be telling you about it shortly. The point is this. As you're looking at this story, don't try to judge it from our standards today and how we do things. Got to go back and understand what they're doing and why they're doing it in their day and age. Now, you may look at this tale, though, and you say, but I see something going on there that's not good. I see this mother-in-law advising her daughter-in-law to get dressed up, that little sexy appearance, go in there and seduce this man, see if you can get yourself a husband. I mean, after all, what'd she say? Get dressed, get clean, get your perfume on, go in there while he's sleeping, slip up there, pull up the covers. Actually, if you're hearing all of that in this story, you're missing the point. You see, sometimes you and I, our minds are conditioned by the media of our day, what we see in television shows and movies and romance novels. And in those kind of places, yeah, we're accustomed to seeing time and time again how this generation today, how they can play a little bit loose and fancy-free with God's sexual ethics and sometimes do things they shouldn't do. And it's not uncommon to be in a show where a seduction takes place. All the guy does is turn his back for a moment. Next thing you know, he turns around. The lady's got all of the dress and everything she had on is just dropped to the floor. I'm not even sure how she gets out of her dress that quickly. It took so long to first put it on. But on the TV shows and the movies, they are seductive. They'll slip into the bed without much hesitation at all. Don't read any of that into the story of Ruth. What you're going to find is that in this story, nothing inappropriate, nothing immoral is happening at all. You just got to understand what's going on. So let's back it up for a moment. Her mother-in-law does say in the text, I want you to wash yourself. I want you to put on some ointment, and then you'll go see Boaz this evening. But there's nothing inappropriate about that at all. In fact, that's what you and I would do in the same situation. You see, remember what Ruth is doing every day of the week during the harvest? She's out there gleaning in the field as a poor gleaner. Starts early morning, gleans all day. She'll be hot, sweaty, and dirty at the end of the day. So before you go and put this proposal to Boaz, first clean up. First wash yourself, put on some ointment, and then go and make the proposal that we have for him. Actually, that's the same thing I would do. If on a Wednesday afternoon I decided to go mow my yard, rest assured, before I show up for Bible study that night, I'm going to shower, put on some clean clothes before I come. That's what Ruth is doing. If you look and say, yeah, but she's slipping into his sleeping quarters. Not exactly. First, do you understand what a threshing floor is? It's basically just a piece of ground. It's open, it's exposed. Because at nighttime, they'll take the grain, they'll crush it up, they'll winnow it, and they use the wind, the breeze, to help separate the grain from the chaff. It's an open space. It's not the same thing as slipping into somebody's bedroom. And when the owner of the farm and all of the servants find a place somewhere to lay down, they're not going to be in their jammies or slipping into their undies. No, they're in their clothes, the way you and I would do if we were doing outdoor camping and we just simply get into a sleeping bag and try to stay warm. They'll lay down, dressed as they are, take a cloak or a blanket, pull up over and try to stay warm. Once again, it's a different story than you might have imagined. And when she goes in there and she confronts him, remember, she's not going to come slip up next to him in bed. No, she lays down at his feet. That's the position of a servant to a master, which is exactly the way Ruth's relationship with Boaz has been all through this. A poor gleaner, a servant, standing before the landowner master. I want you to understand there are three characters in the book of Ruth, three main characters. You've got Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz. And all through the book, they are described as godly and honorable people. I mean, there's not a hint of anything that's wrong in their actions all through this book. You've got three good people, which means as you read the story, just assume that what they're doing is above board, that they're not up to something they shouldn't be doing. Now, what is it exactly then that Ruth is doing as she goes in, uncovers his feet, and lays down? What's up with that? Well, the key to understanding what she's doing is in what she says to Boaz. Because he will wake up. He'll be startled by all of this. He'll ask, what's going on? And then she's going to reply to him. And it's what she says that lets us know what she's proposing. Now, what she says is in verse 9. It's our text for the day. And here's what Ruth said to Boaz. She said, spread your wing over me, for you are my Redeemer. Memorize that. Spread your wing over me, for you are my Redeemer. What she said in those words is this, that Naomi and Ruth are proposing to Boaz that he be their kinsman redeemer. Now, a kinsman redeemer, that's a family member who comes and bails out the family that has gotten themselves into financial trouble. They're in debt. Set us free from the bondage we have to our debt. Set us free. Give us a chance to get up and get back on our feet once again. Basically, she's asking for his help as a kinsman redeemer, a family member who helps him in a time of need. Now, this is the kind of thing that the Jews often would do. It's part of their tradition. It's something Moses wrote about. In fact, he gave rules and regulations of how it should operate in a good manner so we help each other within our families. You can read those rules and regulations in Leviticus chapter 25. So, for example, here's one of the scenarios. Suppose you have a man and he becomes so poor and gets so deep in debt, he sells off family property. Property that was passed along from generation to generation to generation. It ought to stay in his family, but he's desperate and he sells it off. He could then appeal to someone in his family, a kinsman, and say, would you be my redeemer? The word there is goel. Would you be my goel, my redeemer? And would you buy back that property and bring it into the family once again, keep it where it belongs? Jews valued that, thought that was the right thing to do with family inheritance. And so you could ask, well, you'll do it. Now, they can say no, but if they rise up and say yes, they become your redeemer. Now, remember Elimelech? He's the man that got this story started. Elimelech and Naomi, 2 sons, 2 daughter-in-laws, but all the men die off in that family, which means there's nobody there to carry on the family name, the heritage of that family. And the property that belonged to Elimelech, it's been sold off because they were so impoverished. They're asking Boaz, will you go buy that property and bring it back into the family for the sake of your relative Elimelech? Now, there's more to the question than that, because also Leviticus says not only can you buy back property and bring it to the family where it belongs, but if you've got, as he says in chapter 25 Leviticus, you got a man who gets so poor he sells himself. He becomes somebody's slave in order to pay off his debt. Then once again, a near kinsman can rise up and say, I want to buy him out of his slavery. I'll pay his debts and set him free. It could be a brother, could be a cousin, could be an uncle. Moses said, doesn't matter who does it, but somebody willing to say, I can't stand to see my kinsman working like that as a slave. I will set him free from his bondage. That's the essence of what she's asking him. We are impoverished. We've sold everything we've got. We have nothing. Will you step up as a relative of Elimelech, and will you come in and buy back our freedom from debt? Will you set us free from what we're under? Now, that may make sense for you when you think about how she phrased it to him. Spread your wing over me, because you are our Redeemer, our Goel. Picture the mother hen who brings the chicks underneath her wing so she can take good care of them, protect them from whatever is out there that could harm them. That's exactly what she's asking for. Would you bring me and my mother-in-law under your wing and take care of us? You know, that's what Jesus said in Matthew 23, when he looked at the city of Jerusalem, said, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, there are times I wished I could gather you close to me, like a mother hen who wants her chicks safe under her wings, but you wouldn't come." And that phrase, "spread your wing over me," that's actually what Boaz said back in chapter 2 when he first met Ruth. Met this poor gleaner, was told about her story, so impressed with her story, he said, "May the Lord bless you and your mother-in-law, and may he spread his wing over you and take good care of you." Well, they prayed for the Lord to spread his wing over them. Now they're proposing to Boaz, "Would you spread your wing over us and take care of us?" That's what Ruth was asking for. Will you be our redeemer, our protector, the one who takes care of us in our time of need? Now, she's also asking for one more thing along with that. She's making a proposal of marriage. That's right. She's saying, "And will you be our protector in the role of a husband? I'm available. Would you marry me? And through marriage, then take care of me and my mother-in-law." It's also a marriage proposal. Now, when you looked at those words, "spread your wing over me and be my redeemer," if you didn't see marriage in that, that's okay, because Boaz did. You see, the very next verse, he responds and he says, "Oh, thank you so much." He says, "You are so kind, and the kindness you're doing now is greater than the kindness that I heard about before, because I heard what you did with your mother-in-law, but boy, this is kind, what you've offered to me," because as he says, you didn't go off after younger men. There's an age difference between Ruth and Boaz, and whatever interest he may have in her, he did not even imagine she could be interested in an old man like himself. But she was, and he says, "Oh, you are so kind. Oh, daughter, you are merciful to me." And so, yes, he hears a marriage proposal in what she said, because that's what she intended. Now, keep this in mind. When you're looking for a family member to bail you out, they don't have to marry you to do that. They just got to buy off your debt and give you a chance to get started again. But Ruth has added that extra element because that's what Naomi has coached her to do. Have him take us under his wing as our protector in the form of marriage, and you become his wife. And that's what Ruth has put out there for Boaz to consider. Now, the kind of marriage that Naomi envisioned is what Moses called the levirate marriage. It was a Jewish tradition, and once again, Moses lays out the rules and regulations, this time in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 25, of how a levirate marriage would operate. Here's a simple version of it. Suppose you have a man who dies. He's married, but there's no son to inherit his name, his property. There's no one to pass the inheritance on to, and thus the family tree branch that he represents is coming to a dead end. Moses said, "That's a shame. Shouldn't happen." So he said, what could happen then is a levirate marriage. One of his brothers steps up and says, "I'll marry the widow." And as the two of them get married, the firstborn son won't be his. Rather, the firstborn son will be named after the father who died. And the brother that is gone, his name passes to the firstborn son, his property, and that family branch continues on through the firstborn son of the levirate marriage. Now, levirate marriage is what Ruth is proposing to him. Let's do that. And you could carry on the tradition of Elimelech. Now, why pick Boaz? Because as we first learned when we met Boaz back in chapter 2, verse 1, that Naomi's husband had a relative, a wealthy man, who was a member of the clan of Elimelech. His name was Boaz. You see, Boaz and Elimelech are related. Don't know the relation, but it's close enough. They're proposing to him, "Would you now come and do a levirate marriage with Ruth so there could be a son who can carry on the name and heritage of Elimelech so that family branch does not die out?" That's the proposal. Now, here's the thing about a levirate marriage. It's a duty and a choice. Moses encouraged Jews to do this, to keep a branch of your family from dying out, but he didn't require that you do it. A man can say no if he wants to. Also, the widow can say no. "Yeah, I married this guy, but I don't want to marry you, his brother," so both have to agree to it, which means Boaz can say no if he chooses. He doesn't have to do the levirate marriage. So Ruth is proposing that as she goes in that night. Now, she uncovered his feet, and we're still stuck with that. What's going on there? Actually, that's part of the levirate marriage proposal, part of their old custom. You know, as you Go back to Moses once again in Leviticus 25. Here's what Moses said. When a man dies, leaves behind a widow, and there's no son to carry on his family, then the brother should step up and marry the widow. What if the brother doesn't? Then here's what Moses said in the text. He said, the widow then, she can take action. The widow can go before the elders of the community and present her case and say, I want him to carry on for my deceased husband, and he won't do it. You see, she does take initiative in a levirate marriage situation. And the uncovering the feet, well, actually, what happens is, if the man says, no, I do not want to marry you and produce a son for my brother, yada, 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 you know what she does? She then takes the sandal off of his foot in the presence of the elders community. And as she takes the sandal off his foot, that's a symbolic action. It leaves his feet bare. And thus you're symbolizing the idea. This man did not step up and perform his duty as a kinsman, a brother to the one who has died. He wouldn't do what he was expected to do, and so now he is bare in feet, no sandals. And he will now be known, the book of Deuteronomy says, as the man who has no sandal on his feet. His feet are bare because he would not step up and perform his duty to his brother who has died. Now that's the story behind uncover the feet of Boaz. When Ruth did that, it was a question done in symbolic form. And the question she's asking Boaz is this: will you now step up and redeem the family of your kinsman Elimelech by marrying me, or are you a man with no sandals? Are you a man whose feet remain bare because you wouldn't step up and do this duty for your family? That's the question she's putting. If you think about that, that's a pretty bold question. It's a question that Moses put out there in the law. And thus everything that Naomi and Ruth are doing is by the book. They're doing exactly what Moses told them to do. Now the good news is that when Boaz got the question, he said yes. Oh, his reply to Ruth is this. Oh, he says, yes, my daughter, have no fear. I'll do everything you've asked me to do because everybody knows you're a virtuous woman. I'll do everything you've asked for. You want me to buy that property? I'll buy it. You wanted me to help you and your mother-in-law get out of poverty and get back on the right track? I'll do it. You wanted me to do it as your husband with my wings spread over you? I'll do it. You wanted it to be a levirate marriage where our firstborn son will carry on the family heritage of Elimelech, my kinsman. I'll do it. Boaz agreed to everything that Ruth asked for when she approached him. Boy, it's a happy ending. You know, we often speak of the book of Ruth as a love story, and when you look at it at the end, it really is. Boaz did have some feelings for Ruth, and I got to imagine she had some for him as well. And so it is a love story, but it's more than that. It is a reminder of our great story with Jesus Christ. Because just like Ruth and Naomi approached Boaz to be their kinsman redeemer, you and I too have a redeemer in Jesus. We have someone that we can approach and ask him, would you spread your wings over us and bring us under your care and protection? And that's what we do in our time of need. We have someone we can approach and say, would you redeem us from the debt that we're in, the debt to sin, and set us free so we can get our life going right once again? See, Jesus is there just like Boaz was. Boaz was ready and willing, just waiting for Ruth to ask the question. And Jesus is likewise our Redeemer, ready and willing to help you. But you're going to have to come to him and make the proposal. You got to be like Ruth and humbly admit your impoverished situation. I'm a sinner who needs the help of my Redeemer. And then you come and you ask and you let him know, I need you. Oh, I remember a song that I grew up with, singing it in church. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Bless me now, my Savior, I come to thee. And that's the attitude every one of us need to have as we approach Jesus Christ, our Redeemer. Father, we thank you for this blessing that you give us in the story of Ruth, because it's a good reminder that we too have a Redeemer, one who's always there waiting to help us in our time of need. I pray we humble ourselves and approach him with humility and boldness to seek the grace and mercy, the love that comes through our Redeemer, Jesus Christ. We pray in his name. Amen.